Gospel of Luke, the 9th chapter. Now about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James, and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which was about to be accomplished in Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my Son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of these things that they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then a man from the crowd shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child." Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. You know, this whole Paul thing that he's talking about to the Corinthians, about the veil that Moses put over his face. It's an interesting thing. There's really no picture of it, obviously, because nobody had a Kodak back then. But this is a picture of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai. See, what happened was when Moses went up to Mount Sinai to get the tablets, he was in the presence of God. And when he was in the presence of God, his face was bleached out. It was brilliant white. And this is actually the Old Testament reading for this week from Exodus, where Moses come down from the mountain and his face is this gleaming white, so much so that Aaron and the other and those who were with him, they wouldn't look upon him. They were terrified because his face was almost radiating like the sun. So what Moses did was Moses put a veil over his face. Moses wore a veil. You know, you think of Moses like the big rugged guy with the staff, you know, and the snakes. And here he's walking around with a veil over his face like a bride walking down the aisle to get married. But that's how it was. He had a veil over his face. Now, nobody really knows whether it was like a full veil that came up over the head, you know, pinned back to his hair with some flowers around it, or if it was like a half veil or what. But Moses would wear this veil all the time. And the only time that he would take the veil off was when he was speaking for God. So when Moses was talking to the people, as the voice of God, he would take the veil off and his face would shine. I imagine that Moses, you know, it'd be like if Moses spent 12 hours in a tanning booth and came out, you know, with this radiating face. So he'd wear the veil all the time and he'd take the veil off to speak for God, and then when he was done speaking for God, he'd put the veil back on. Which actually kind of typifies a lot of how God is treated in the Old Testament. This separated, this away, this being that hangs out in the Holy of Holies and only sticks his head out every now and again to see if there's anything going on. You know, this distant, absent type of God. And when the people read the Torah, they read the Torah as though it was the Word and very important, but God was up here way out somewhere else. There was a disconnect between God and the people. Now that's a good thing sometimes. I mean, that's like the parents going away and leaving the kids home at the house by themselves. Nobody's watching over you. I see you roll your eyes. Did you have an experience about that, Sandy? Something you want to share later on? No? Okay. You know, I mean, God's not paying attention. And if God's not paying attention, that's great because you can do whatever you want, right? But the other side of the coin is that there's no connection. There's no intimacy. There's no relationship. So you have this God that's way out here not really paying attention, and a bunch of people run around doing whatever they want, which is awesome and fine as long as what they're doing is fulfilling and life-giving, but sooner or later, they want that love and that connection. Well, then along comes Jesus, of course. And Jesus being the full representation of God, wrapped up in human form, the incarnation, the human and divine. And when that happens, the glory of God is no longer out there and absent and other. The glory of God is present and active. That's the difference. The difference between pre-Jesus and post-Jesus is that once Jesus comes, God is here. God is active. God is present. Not tucked in the Holy of Holies. Not up in the seventh heaven, though he was in the Holy of Holies and the seventh heaven, but everywhere else. And so Paul says when Jesus comes along, that hidden glory that Moses put the veil over to keep God from being seen is taken away. And it's not just taken away from Moses, it's taken away from everyone. We do not have a God who is off somewhere else. We do not have a God who is absent and doesn't care. In the midst of the gift of Jesus Christ, we have a God who is now immediate, present, which is really, really awesome. Because God is right here all the time. No place that we can go can we get away from the presence of God. God is immediate and intimate. It's also a struggle because God's here all the time. So with God here all the time, we really can't get away with stuff, can we? I mean, it'd be nice if, God would take a siesta every afternoon. But God's not paying attention to me for about an hour, and then I'll come back and we'll be fine. We have a God who is with us all the time, and we have the glory of God intimately revealed to us. Not in a blazing face of Moses, but in the hands and feet of Christ. We have a God who is intimately connecting to us, not in some kind of profound glory of a cloud speaking the name, but in bread and wine, in water and word. We have a God who has chosen to move away from that radiant glory of Moses' face that is veiled to a God who is intimate and connected. The awesome thing about the Transfiguration, we hear Jesus has this incredible moment, the disciples have this incredible moment. What does Jesus do? He goes right back down to the people. Jesus doesn't hang out on top of the mountain and go, okay, I got my throne now, this is awesome. Yeah, I got that right here. Yeah, come on. Let's build a little city. Make sure there's a hot tub because this whole, nights get colder right here. Jesus goes right back down to the people. The next day, Jesus is staring down a demon-possessed child. That is what God is for us. Not veiled, not hidden glory, not somewhere other that we need to seek out and hope that we're going to catch a glimpse of. It is a God who is right here with us, intimate, connected. It is a God who feeds us with spirit, who brings us to the table, who gathers us together. It is a God who says, I don't want you to be alone. I didn't set you on this path by yourself. I set you on this path together. I set you on this path with other people. It's not an easy path. Anybody want to stand up and testify to an easy, wonderful, awesome life? I can sit down and feel it. It's not an easy path. It's not an easy path to bring the Word of God into the people. it's God's path. And God has given us the tools to be able to do it. That intimate glory revealed to us. Bread and wine, water and word. Each other. To depend on and lean upon. You want to see the glory of God? Look around. You want to see the face of God revealed? Look around. It's not in the veiled face of Moses. It's in the revealed face of all of us. That Son, who God said, this is my chosen, listen to him, is down in the dirt and the dust with the demons and the broken. That is God's glory. This is God's glory. This is where God is revealed. This is how God has chosen to be presented. Here. With us. In us. And a world that is looking for the glory of God, they want Moses. They get us. They get us. Maybe not brilliantly shining faces, but here in the dust and the dirt, in the pain, tears of joy. This is how God has chosen to do the work in the world. With us. And I see a bunch of glorious faces. So look around. See the glory of God revealed, because it is here. It is now. In the name of the Son,